Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
As 2024 comes to a close, we reflect on a year filled with both challenges and opportunities. Looks like that's what we're seeing in the chat. We also look ahead to 2025 and consider the leadership and DEI trends that we believe will inform leadership priorities. In the next hour, our speakers will take a closer look at those trends and offer insight and practical ideas so you can plan your leadership development agenda in alignment with issues that will be prominent in the new year and beyond. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our speakers, Leah and Nick, to introduce themselves and get us underway.
Thank you, Sue. And hi, everyone. Leah and I are incredibly excited to be speaking about our 5 for 25 today. But before we dive in, we figured we should probably introduce ourselves a little bit. So it is my great pleasure to introduce the amazing Leah Clark. Some of you may have joined Leah last year with her trends for 2024. And some of you may have joined her more recently with the leadership lens on the AI's impact of the workplace. I've had the pleasure of working with her this past year. And what some of you may not know yet is that Leah's actually been working in leadership development and consulting for nearly 30 years. She has the most brilliantly curious brain I have ever experienced. And when we're having our conversations about trends, about pulses, she constantly is considering what our clients are saying, what the reality of leaders is around the globe, and how our assumptions actually get ground in evidence and factual data. So all of this to say is you are in very safe hands over the next hour, because every trend we are about to present to you has gone through the Leah stress test. So it's been researched to the nth degree, it's been debated back and forth, and I can guarantee that she has thought about it entirely.
Thank you so much, Nick. I appreciate that. And I am beyond delighted to introduce you to Nick Girvin, who is our Director of Leadership and DEI. She is most definitely a trailblazing figure in the realm of impactful and innovative learning solutions. And as I mentioned, she is at the helm of our product strategy. What I love most about Nick, I mean, there are many things, but she does a masterful job of highlighting the importance of inclusivity in a meaningful and simultaneously practical way. She challenges me to think differently and to be increasingly aware of the cultural nuance of what it means to be a leader. And I know for a fact that she will also challenge your thinking in the next hour. So it is my distinct pleasure to share this time with all of you and also with Nick. And so with that, let's go ahead and get underway. We asked you at the beginning of the session your word for 2024, and we wanted to share with you the words that we chose when we challenged ourselves with the same question. And the word that I chose for 2024 was unsettled, upheaval in several different dimensions. Different than uncertainty. Uncertainty could go in a positive way, maybe it goes in a not so positive direction, but unsettled, I chose very specifically as different from uncertainty because it implies a bit of a lack of stability and uneasiness. And I was looking at some of the comments in the chat. I think Savi said roller coaster and Lisa said oof. And I felt, oh, they're kind of going where I'm going with this bit of uneasiness or unsettled feeling. Unsettled in a few different dimensions. First of all, artificial intelligence. At the beginning of the year, the massive uptick in the use of ChatGPT, the fastest growing user base of any technology in ChatGPT in the early days of 2024, but an uneasiness. How does this work? What is behind the black box that is AI? And what are, who provided this information? What are the ethical implications? So an uneasiness, an unsettled feeling, even as we embraced the technology. Certainly an uneasiness on several other fronts, global crises, political climate in various different spots around the world. a lack of clarity or unsettled uneasiness, if you will, again, in the economy, even an unsettled sense of how leaders and employees and organizations are interacting, a bit of a clash of priorities, generational differences, work locations. Uncertainty is to be expected. The term VUCA has been around since 1987. And if we did this webinar 5 years from now, I could put uncertainty in as the word and it would probably hold. But unsettled is something a little bit different. And for me, it characterized that uneasiness and that disquieting feeling that many of us, and I'll speak for myself, had in 2024. So roller coaster, or Lisa saying, oof, I feel you on that. Nick, I'd love to have you share your choice of the word unfolding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think unfolding was something that just hit me straight away. And I quite like the fact that when I said this to our marketing team, they came out with the imagery of a flower. And I'm a massive visual thinker. So for me, I really like what that represents in terms of 2024. You know, we started the beginning of the year, we had our seeds planted, and we knew that there was going to be a lot of growth that was going to happen over the next 12 months. But we didn't necessarily know whether it was going to pay off. If we think about things like AI, we didn't necessarily know what we were growing. So I quite like the idea of the flower imagery. But what I also want to recognize, a little bit like you all in the chat and a little bit like what Leah's already said, is just because we had some heads poking above the soil, it didn't mean that we had the necessary conditions for them to thrive and bloom. And of course, flowers don't grow overnight. 2024 was very much a picture that was continuing to grow. We had new technologies, we had different people focuses, we had new practices coming into play. And like a flower responds to the environment, so thinking about Wayne and Restabilize, or Namyanka and Rough, what I would say is that leaders have had to respond to the climate around us. And likely, as mentioned, this is things like the economic conditions, the technological advancements, and let's be honest, it's also been about the geopolitical unrest. So we've still got a few weeks left of 2024, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more opening and closing and restabilizing as we finish the year. But of course, we're not here to talk about 2024 or even commiserate about what we've gone through this year. What we are here to do is think about 2025. So Sue's already put you on the spot. Today, I'm about to do that too, because I'd love in chat for you to write what you think is the word that's going to represent 2025. So let's see where we're seeing 2025, what the words are. We've got innovative, possibilities, transformation, instability. So we've still got a little bit of that nervousness. I love things like the novel, the change, the growth. Very much like how we were starting out in 2024. What is 2025 going to involve? Is it more challenge? Is it more upheaval? I love that we've got a continuation of my flower imagery with reseeding. That makes me very, very happy. Thank you for that. Oh, entertaining. I love a bit of entertainment.
Uneasiness and change, right? There's that change word came in. Yep, there it is. Change again. Lisa sticking with unease. I don't know if you see that one, Nick, but unease, still a bit of that for sure, evolving.
I love that Elizabeth's also put about riding waves. That is going to connect beautifully to my chosen word for 2025. So I will happily move us on to that topic. So Leah, we've both described what our word is, and you'll know that mine was uncharted. So very much around that riding the waves, because in 2024, I was focusing on the unfolding. Now I'm going with uncharted, because it is about the world is going to be different to what we have known it to be yet again. And we know that AI's infiltration, the global tensions, the political differences that we've experienced in 2024 are going to be just as loud, if not louder, in 2025. But although I have opened this with, oh goodness, we've got all of this to deal with, what I will say is I do see Uncharted as a positive thing, like what we started in the chat with the innovation and then the excitement and the creativity, because Uncharted is about opportunity. It's about pushing boundaries, discovering new destinations, championing new ways of thinking, and embracing the unknown, which I will acknowledge I sound a little bit giddy at as I'm talking about it, but I will also recognize the very real change fatigue we're all experiencing. But what I will say is Uncharted isn't always easy, but it does have hope on the horizon for doing things differently. And that makes me very happy. So, Leah, how about you? Tell us a little bit about your polarity.
And as Nick knows, I grappled with what this word should be and really wrestled with what I felt characterized what I think is an indication of what 2025 will hopefully be and what I think leaders specifically are going to be wrestling with. And I just want to invite all of you, if you haven't put it in the chat, please go ahead and tell us what your word is. But the word that I ultimately landed on was polarity. So this idea of balancing tensions, and polarity really about finding harmony between two opposing forces, two different ideas, and ensuring that neither side particularly dominates. And it's a concept that can be applied certainly in decision making, in social relationships, in various contexts, any place where differing contexts exist. And my hope is that by embracing this idea of polarity, we can acknowledge and respect differences and ultimately create a place where, by respecting those differences and integrating them, a greater sense of peacefulness and harmony can be achieved in the various dimensions of how we show up as leaders and as people. So my hope is we will move from this place of being unsettled and uneasy to a greater sense of harmony. And I think that this will be important for leaders to encourage in the way that they show up with their teams and the way they show up in embracing technology, spoiler alert on that, and how they encourage the same with those that they lead. So my hope is an optimism for this sense of balancing different dimensions and a greater sense of harmony. So now that we have looked back and looked forward a little bit, we do want to offer to you our 5 for 25 top leadership and DEI trends for next year. And you're going to hear me say this phrase, and beyond, as Nick and I were practicing for this session. And beyond kept coming out of my mouth. I suspect it will here again today in this moment, because these trends will carry us into 2025, and many of them we believe will stick with us in subsequent years. I avoided it right there. So what is trend number one? Just barely. So what is trend number one? Perhaps it comes as no surprise that the trend that we think will be top of mind for leaders and organizations is artificial intelligence. The difference is a shift in dabbling in AI, piloting AI, to leaders and organizations looking at more full-scale deployment, strategic implementation. I'm starting to see this shift in the organizations that I speak with and the leaders that I work with. If 2024 was dipping our toe in the water, the end of 2024 and into 2025 is how do we really deploy AI in a significant way? And in order to do that successfully, leaders and those they lead need to audit their mindset and their skill set. And what I'm noticing about that mindset in particular is a shift in attitudes towards an embrace of AI. So at the beginning of 2024, it was a bit more fear-based, anxiety-based. It was, defense against AI. And I don't mean to take that lightly, because there are ethical concerns and certainly protocols and guidelines that need to be put in place. And that was where a lot of the conversation happened earlier in the year. But even in the past few months, I've started to notice a shift from anxiety and fear to increasing optimism and positivity. in the data that we are currently looking at, GP research on leadership and AI, 66% of individual contributors and 72% of leaders say that AI will significantly transform their organization. And words like excited and optimistic are floating to the top of the list when we ask both audiences how they feel about AI. So the mindset is shifting. That's the good news. Now, where I see some opportunities, maybe even some worry spots, is in some of the actions that leaders are taking or not taking to convey the message to their teams that they are prepared to successfully lead a Gen AI initiative. And that's not because they don't play an important role in spearheading those efforts, because they do. In fact, the same research that we are currently combing through and will share early next year indicates that 76% of individual contributors and 83% of leaders say that leaders play an important role, are integral to a successful Gen AI effort. So leaders are pivotal if AI implementation is going to go successfully, and both they and the teams they lead lack a little bit of confidence that they have a clear plan and have the competence and confidence to execute that plan. So what can leaders do? Well, first of all, start developing that plan and share it. Even if it is not completely carved in stone or in ink or whatever you're going to be crafting it in these days, share what you know with your people and let them know that you are working on that plan, that you have a strategy or the start of a strategy in terms of how you're going to tackle or embrace more large-scale AI deployment. Good news as well, if it's not a fully solidified plan, because that gives you the opportunity to involve your people in its development, engage with them in dialogue, because they want to talk about it. Again, if I go to what we're seeing in the research, less than half of those individual contributors that we surveyed said that they're talking about AI frequently enough. And I think it's upwards of 60% say that they want to talk about AI with their leaders more. So if you're not engaging in dialogue with your people, you're missing an opportunity to involve them, give them the confidence, give them the opportunity to help shape that plan, and let them know that you are boldly moving forward into what it means to lead a human plus AI team. I would say as well for leaders, explore upskilling and reskilling implications. Just fancy terms for being really clear on what new skills your team members need to embrace technology and how their roles may be reshaped as a result of a broader generative AI embrace. And I will tell you again, spoiler alert, upskilling and reskilling is another place where both leaders and individual contributors suggest that there is more work to be done. And then last but not least, as you move from dabble to deploy, use the tools and remember that AI is just that. It is a tool that is most powerful in the hands of the human beings on your team. So sending that message and maintaining strong connection with the human beings, the people that are, I believe, the best part of our organizations is absolutely critical. Give them the opportunity to talk about AI, to explore that, and let them know of the value that they contribute to the organization, how they connect to the organization's mission, so that they know it is not AI versus your human beings, the teams that you are responsible for, but it is the combination of both. Nick, what would you add to this first trend?
You know, as I listened to each of those points when we were first unpacking these, I sat there going, oh, yes, that's the most important. Oh, no, maybe that's the most important. But I guess my core takeaway from all of these points is that it is about that human focus. You know, AI has really shown us in 2024 what it's capable of. So leaders really need to seek out 2025 for opportunities to get humans excited. Although we have definitely seen that shift in a positive direction, so moving away from the fear, we need to recognize that some people still aren't connected with the value that AI is going to bring. They're seeing it as maybe a fad or a science fiction trend. But the reality is that AI isn't going, it's growing. So as a leader, you need to create that space, that dialogue, and that constant check-in around what's good, what's bad, and let's be honest, if it's around generative AI, what's fascinating. So make that conversation continuous.
I love that. Not going, but growing. A little bit of an anchor back to your earlier imagery. And so we will keep that. And whoever said reseeding in the chat, Nick acknowledged it again there with the growing. So love that. Thank you for adding your insight, Nick. So let's go to trend number 2, and it ties to trend number 1. Trend number 2 in the leadership space, leadership and DE&I space, we see as a focus on cognitive skills. AI provides a tremendous head start. It can analyze information, source content, create videos, and it needs your brain. It needs the brain of your leaders and of your people. To reap the incredible rewards that AI can bring, we need to bring our own cognitive thinking. We need to bring our own sense making of the information that we glean from AI to really help organizations harness its power. And leaders need to encourage the same in their people. AI can give you that massive head start, but the secret ingredient is how leaders apply their own thinking and how they focus on these higher order skills to really reap the rewards that technology can bring. And it's not just what we're seeing in our data or what we're hearing in the clients that we talk to on a daily basis. If you look at some of the World Economic Forum data from just a year or two ago, cognitive skills rose to the top of the list of most critical for what leaders need today and in the future. And I believe that that is directly connected to the rise of generative AI and, again, the massive head start it can give, but the need for leaders to bring their own cognitive thinking to the table. So organizations would be wise to focus on this area, and I know that many of them are. So what do we mean by that? We mean, in terms of cognitive skills, developing or strengthening your business acumen as a leader and encouraging the same in the leaders you support. Understanding your business inside and out, its operations, its finances, position in the marketplace, all of that is non-negotiable. Because when leaders grasp and have a strong business acumen, they can make informed decisions. As AI gives them information, they can put that information in the context of the organizations and the industries that they are a part of. It means that they can spot opportunities and challenges. That business acumen will always be the North Star that will help guide them. So for leaders, cognitive skills, number 1, business acumen. Next, enterprise thinking. For those of you who are familiar with GP Strategies, you know that we have focused on leadership mindsets for a few years now. And for me, enterprise thinking has always been the unsung hero of the mindsets. And yet it is so important and having, I would say, more than its day in the sun with respect to organizations that I've spoken with, because with greater frequency, both leaders and organizations are recognizing the importance of cultivating enterprise thinking, which is all about looking at the bigger picture and recognizing how the work that you do contributes to that larger mission. When leaders are able to focus in this area, they spark innovation, collaboration, and help their teams acknowledge and recognize how the work that they do connects to something bigger. The best leaders who embody an enterprise mindset make that connection on a regular basis. So enterprise mindset, super important. Number 3, strategic thinking. But several of you have put in the chat this idea of change, and we've talked about the world being a very fast-paced existence for many of us. And so in this fast-paced environment, strategic thinking is a must because it empowers us to, as leaders, evaluate risks and opportunities to not only get that quick hit of the information we get from artificial intelligence, but to use it to think long term and make choices that drive sustainable growth. This is all about encouraging leaders to bring their own judgment to the decisions that they make and the way that they lead both a technology-based and human-based team. Number 4, explore creative thinking. AI is going to increasingly be an integrated part of our workplace. And so while AI can provide that massive head start, it's the unique perspective and unique experiences that leaders and teams bring to the table that will really help individuals and organizations stand out. When you think about it, AI can provide what's known. It looks at patterns and data, and everyone's going to be, after a while, using the same AI tools and querying in the same ways. And so if we're using the same information, then after a while, there will be this sameness to the ideas that are generated. All the more reason for individuals to focus on how they can stand out and embracing creative thinking, embracing what is unfamiliar, new, or novel will be critically important. And then last but not least, understanding data-driven decision-making. All of these are critical areas for the organizations that we're speaking with, and we put a check mark next to each and every one of them is really important. AI can give you a treasure trove of information, but it's how you use that information, how you make sense of it, how you craft a narrative around it. Imagine getting an infographic or a research paper, and all you have is the data. That has limited value. It's the story, it's the context, it's how you use that data, again, to make informed decisions that really creates the value. And so giving leaders the skills that they need to make data-driven decisions, to tell a story with the numbers is a really critical focus. I'm going to say it because I'm just going to, today and beyond in the years after 2025. So these skills are not just around personal development, it's also for leaders to position themselves and their organization for success in what is an increasingly complex landscape. Nick, you want to chime in here before I jump out of my seat with excitement about cognitive skills?
No, I think what I would say is, laying down the gauntlet, AI won't replace humans whilst it's encouraging us to do something that technology can't. So hearing everything that Leah has just been saying, bring your human self into your leadership in 2025, do the things that AI can't do, tell the stories, use your emotional intelligence, use your cultural insights, take the gift of the shortcuts that AI gives you and use that time effectively for that higher level thinking. And what I will say is, for that higher level thinking, there's aspects that each of us bring to the table that are slightly different to our colleagues. Leah and I have very different thought processes and very different backgrounds, but they harmonize together. So we'd like to open up a poll with this in mind to say, out of these 5 different focuses, which cognitive skills are you going to really bring into 2025 to make a difference? Where is your strength? Where are you going to be shining? Wow, we had the fastest answer ever with some growing strategic thinking. We've got some enterprise catching up. Creative is bouncing around. If you haven't voted just yet, please do. We'd love to see where that strength lies. And we're just going to give you a few moments. We're about 50% of responses so far.
I don't want to lead people to enterprise thinking, but I get a little sad when it's low, Nick. So I'm
You're leading the jury.
Come on. The numbers are going up now.
Amazing. Okay, it's starting to balance out again. We're doing okay. So we're at 72%, which I'd say is a pretty great response rate. And what I would say is, right now, we're looking at a nice balance between Leah's enterprise thinking, between that growing the strategic thinking, and of course, the creative thinking. But if you focused on the business acumen or the data-driven decision-making, it's okay. Because the core takeaways from this is we have got quite an even split across all answers, between 23% for our top 3, 14 and 18, the ones just behind. So what we're actually learning from this is it's not about whether you were in the one that had the biggest response rate. It's the fact that you're not alone. And these skills are all going to be important for 2025, but they don't have to come from who you are in 2024. Seek out the person that excels in the areas that you don't. I know in our organization, if someone wants creative thinking, they come to me. If they want enterprise thinking, they go to Leah. Use the people around you and use them as the strength, because it is about humans moving forward together as we're embracing what adds the value between human and AI.
And I'd offer the flip side of that too, Nick, as you and I have talked about. If you are a leader who does excel in one of these areas, that's a great opportunity for you to be a mentor or a resource or offer your strength to others. Often in some leadership development programs, we might have folks who say, well, oh, I'm really good at that already. I don't need to go to that particular experience, learning journey or session. And I think that is such a missed opportunity to, first of all, hone or refine that skill, but also to pay it forward, to support your colleagues in the area that they're weak in and that you're strong in. It's really an opportunity to give back. So love talking about both sides of that. Okay, let us move into trend number 3, keeping an eye on our time here together. Let me just see if I can get this to advance. Okay. Just move my chat out of the way and let us go to trend number 3, humanosity, which is all about keeping a people-centric approach, while moving at pace. So we have talked about throughout the session and the time that we've had together, the uncertainty, the pace of change, the need to move from dabble to deploy and to move with some speed. We can do that while also maintaining a focus on a human-centered approach. And so it's really about keeping both of these things together, keeping the human-centered focus while moving quickly. And one of the first things that we're going to advocate for leaders to do to encourage a human-centered approach combined with a sense of speed or velocity is to balance, and here's where my polarity comes in, this concept of cautious curiosity. And in full disclosure, this is a term that emerged in a cohort that I was coaching not that long ago. As a group of leaders, we're talking about leadership and AI. And what cautious curiosity indicates is this need to absolutely encourage folks to embrace AI, empower them with tools, encourage experimentation and innovation, while simultaneously acknowledging that there are still some risks. There are very real ethical concerns. There is the desire to encourage the use of it while making sure that that use has relevance, not just playing with the shiny object, but really making sure that that curiosity and that use of the tool is combined with a sense of caution around some of the concerns or the reasons behind why you would use the technology. So I love this idea of encouraging experimentation, encouraging movement, while also being mindful of some of the implications and some of the conversations that we want to have around that human plus AI combination. So cautious curiosity is the first of the 5 under trend number 3. And I think, Nick, you're covering the next one.
I am indeed. And I think this is a very real reality a few of us are going to experience in 2025. And that is a potential disconnect between our personal values and our professional responsibilities. So if we think about some organizations and what they're focusing on in 2025, some are pushing for a return to the office, some are shifting their commitments from DEI. And of course, with all of these AI implementations, there's the very real realization that this is going to impact the human headcount. So leaders are going to be facing challenges where they've got to embed a corporate agenda that may not align with who they are or what they stand for. And this is very much a balancing act, but it is using your values and your authenticity in a way that makes a difference to your people and to the outcomes. So it's about showing up authentically. It's about using your cultural influence to ensure that these decisions they are made ethically, that the human impact is being considered, and that you're helping your team find their feet again. You know, it's addressing their sense of loss with the excitement of the potential gain. What I will say explicitly is this is not about being a cheerleader for something you don't believe in, because people will see through you instantly. What it is it's finding what's important in the message, how you connect the human for the greater good of the conversation. So it is using your values in a really positive way to empower your people to get them moving forward faster.
I
Leah.
love that. Yeah, and I so appreciate what you said about it needing to be authentic, right? And folks will certainly easily identify if you are not on board with something and pretending to be. So I appreciate, Nick, what you said about authenticity. So number 3, we want to talk about the great re-engagement. And we know that just a few short years ago, it feels like an eternity, we were talking about the great resignation, and engagement, retention became very much in focus. And while we certainly are past the great resignation, there is perhaps some concern that our folks are not as fully engaged as they could be or that we need them to be. In fact, there was a recent survey that indicated 45 of professionals said that engagement needs a serious boost because not all of our team members are operating at the level we need to be, you know, and we want to balance this great re-engagement and getting folks galvanized with the need to also acknowledge the flexibility that folks are asking for and the way that they want to balance those professional and personal values that Nick mentioned. So there is that polarity or that balance between re-engaging and burnout. And we certainly want to encourage leaders to find that sweet spot. But what I'm talking about here is some of the conversations around, well, Fridays are perhaps not that productive, and Mondays I have a hard time getting started. And we start this sort of slow descent into lack of engagement and organizations that aren't producing the way that they need to for their customers. And so what can you do as a leader? Well, certainly we are not advocating for burning people out, but we are advocating for making sure that you are tuned in to the engagement of your people, ensuring that they're giving all that they can to the organization and they're getting all that they want to in terms of their own satisfaction. How do you do that as a leader? Secret sauce that I've always advocated for and GP has for many, many years. As a leader, showing up with your people as both competent and connected. It is the secret sauce. So competence as a leader is your skills, demonstrating that you have the knowledge, the capabilities, the experience that you're going to help your people be successful. And at the same time, ensuring that you maintain connection, investing in the relationships that you have, building trust, exhibiting emotional intelligence, because it's that connection that is going to help your team not only move forward, but move forward together with you and with the other members of their team. So humanosity, move quickly and get your people engaged the way that you need them to, while also balancing some of the things that are important to them. Nick, I think you're next.
Leah, if you're going to go with secret sauce, I'm going to add a magic ingredient into that engagement aspect. And I'm going to talk about the power of purpose. You know, we know that having purpose is absolutely essential for high performing teams, but we also recognize, and this was from some studies this year, that only a third of our staff are actually encouraged to think about their personal impact. And so if we're talking about re-engagement and we're talking about moving at pace, it is down to you all as leaders to build cultures of purpose and responsibility and have shared goals. This kind of links back to what Leah mentioned earlier about employees needing to belong to something bigger. You know, for too long, when we've talked about value, we've talked about the role rather than the person. This is how the role fits into the greater good of the organization. But if we're talking about unpacking the potential of humans, It should be about the unique value that that individual particularly is bringing to the role. So for some of us, that means that we're going to shift from that traditional managerial role into being more of a strategic coach, somebody who is all about the empowerment of their people, the collaboration of teams, and most importantly, about autonomy for individuals so that they can really see what their unique value is bringing to the wider table. And it means that they'll bring it more freely. Leah, do you want to take us through that last point?
I will. I'm going to move quickly as well, knowing that there's a lot of goodness that Nick, I want to make sure you have time to share on the fourth and fifth trend. So I will just quickly touch upon recognizing interrelatedness. This is all about ensuring that your teams understand when there's the opportunity to work independently and when they have the opportunity to connect with others across the globe, across their organization, to acknowledge that sometimes they might not be the best person to complete a particular task, or that they don't have a certain skill, and how can they be humble enough to reach out to others and involve them in the task or the effort as part of a larger organization. So, I know this might be a little controversial when I say I don't think that we can move quickly and move independently all the time. There are some times where you may need to, as my teenager likes to say, lock in and move and work on your own. And very often, in order to grow organizational capability and to get the best product, teams and individuals need to find ways to work together at pace to deliver for their organization. So recognizing interrelatedness is key. Nick,
And what we're going to see with the coming trends is a very real shift. We started off this webinar focusing on very much technology and those sort of traditional thinking skills. And what we're going to close it towards is around that human factor and the people element. So trend 4 has to be acknowledging inclusion. And for some of you, you're going to be like, well, obviously, yes. And for some of you, you're going to be sitting there going, really? But what we're actually seeing in this trend is that despite a number of organizations eliminating or downsizing their DEI efforts, the reassuring constant that we're finding through our clients and through research is that the majority of senior leaders are still committed to DEI. They are still seeing the value across the political spectrum of DEI being a core element of their business strategy. And what I will say is they're not doing this, or they're not seeing this as an essential purely because it's a nice, easy option, because it's really not. It's a savvy strategic move. They're thinking about their service success, they're thinking about their talent pipeline, and quite frankly, with all the noise around inclusion and DEI right now, organizations are going to find themselves under a bit of a microscope in 2025. And if staff and clients aren't seeing themselves represented in the organizational decisions or at their senior leadership level, they're going to know about it, and we're all going to experience those consequences. But I do want to just backtrack a moment, because inclusion is going to look a little bit different to what we've known it about. It is that shift to leaders taking ownership of it. And the first part of that is about how you're demonstrating your values. What our teams want is the kind of leader whose actions are matching their words, who are deeply committed to their values, who they can trust to do the right thing and have safe conversations with. What we need to see in 2024 is the real impact of our actions. In this year, what we found is a lot of leaders saying, this is me. I stand up, I demonstrate my values, I stand for what I am. But when asked, their teams aren't seeing that. So it really is thinking about, what is your impact for 2025? What do you want it to be? And what I would say to all of you is take a moment and reflect on how you've shown up in the past week. How have your behaviors impacted others? How have they demonstrated what you believe or who you are or what you stand for? And what I would say is go and ask your teams for that feedback. Don't do it just yet because we still have another great trend to come. But after this event, don't be an echo chamber. Go and get that feedback around the real impact that you're having and discover whether your actions are meeting your impact. If we're moving on to leaders owning inclusion, it's also about being consistent, because we're seeing that move from inclusion from being that mandated training event into that core leadership essential. So this means that leaders need to operate from a place of curiosity and heightened awareness. So in 2025, I want to see your inclusive practice not just a sporadic moment, but a consistent awareness. You know, it should be about prioritizing inclusion in every process. This is every interaction, every relationship. And I know there'll be a few of you listening to me right now going, geez, that sounds exhausting. And yes, it will require a little constant effort, but it's also about things that we should be doing as leaders anyway. So scheduling the regular check-ins, facilitating meetings equitably, considering flexible work options, and of course, one of the most important things that I really want to empower leaders to do is to challenge your policies when they don't align with the needs of your diverse workforce. So 2025 will bring some discomfort, but see those as teachable moments. This next point I am so very passionate about, and it's something that I feel is long overdue, but with the younger generations coming into the workforce, something that we are going to be held accountable for. And that is making sure that we are seeing behaviours and your impact as important as your productivity. So as a leader, you need to own your own behaviour, you need to own your team's behaviour. We used to have this idea that if you were really good at your job, we'll just excuse any bad behavior or any negative impact that you have on others because we were too afraid to challenge it. That is not going to be the case in 2025. We need to hold people accountable. They need to recognize that that's no longer acceptable. And as your role as a leader, that's going to change, because it's not just about your teams excelling in their role. It is about them maintaining the appropriate behavior. And if we're going to be talking about behaviours, we're also going to be talking about Spotlight. And that is about supporting your underrepresented employees. We all know that in our teams, we've got those shiny individuals that everybody goes to that are great. We know they're great. We know they're reliable. But we've also got those people on the outsides that could be absolutely brilliant, but they don't get the spotlight in the same way. So leaders in 2025, I need you to support your underrepresented employees. You have so much influence in your organization and you can't keep it to yourself. So it's about actively questioning promotion and succession planning. It's about ensuring that your diverse profiles gain visibility and status. It's about thinking how you delegate, give opportunities for individuals to really show what they can do and build their confidence to speak up and speak out. What I like to say is, if your organization has inadvertently closed a door, be the window opener. And finally, this one I can't stress enough. It's really, really important, and it's going to sound a little baffling, but it is turning up the volume and quietening the noise. Because even though I could talk all day on the benefits that inclusive leadership will bring you, we do need to recognize that it isn't always a natural element, and people will resist change if they don't see the need for it. So inclusive practice isn't about you telling people to be nice to each other or to work together. It isn't even about you showing them how to demonstrate inclusive behavior. It is about you helping them understand the importance of it and the impact. What we need to do is address any misconceptions that inclusive initiatives are unfairly rewarding people based on their race or gender instead of their skills and contributions. Inclusive leadership practice is about empowering those with the ability to succeed to be able to. So inclusion is absolutely something that is moving from the outskirts, that's moving from being an island into being part of the core leadership DNA. And Leah and I have been working on this quite heavily over the past year, which is how does that look like as a practical journey for leaders? So Leah, I'd love to get your thoughts on how you see inclusion being that leadership element.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think you've touched upon it, especially with younger generations entering the workforce. They are expecting to be working within organizations and populations that reflect the diversity in the world at large. So they want to know that those are organizations that they can feel confident that they will be included in and they will be invited to be a part of. What I would also just say, and I'm mindful of time, Nick, I want to give us the time to move on to the next trend. But the other thing I wanted to just point out, when you look at the turn up the volume and quiet the noise point that you made, for me, when I first read that, I took it a little bit differently and in a way that I think is also valuable, which is to say that as a leader, perhaps paying a little less attention to the news or this organization's doing that and this organization's pulling back on that particular initiative, and instead focusing on your own moral compass and what it tells you about how to treat other human beings is perhaps the right way to, or the right volume to turn up and the right noise to quiet. And I think if leaders follow that moral compass, then they will be well served and likely attract the kind of employees that they want to have as part of their teams and their organization. So I know we're running out of time and we've got a fifth trend to get to, so let's go ahead and move along.
We absolutely do. And the final and fifth trend is around well-being. And what I will say is, like D&I, it's going to change its identity. So for those of you that have just seen this word pop up on screen and relaxed back into your chairs a little bit, thinking I've got a free pass, the company offers some form of well-being package already. You don't. What I would like you to answer in the chat just now is where you see the challenges of well-being in your organization. So think about what are the difficulties that you have in owning well-being, because guess what? It's not going to be about the pizza parties. It's not going to be about the well-being packages. It is going to be about leaders making this a measurable leadership performance. So we have got straight away that it's not a focus, and that is the reality that many organizations are experiencing. It's already a crowded focus, and it's just not made it to the table. We've got change fatigue. We've got workload. Lack of time is absolutely something that we do need to address when we're thinking about the status of how our employees are feeling. So the way in which we had well-being show up for us was very much acknowledging, just like what you've said here, a real range of spectrums between engagement all the way through to the lack of investment, whether that's emotionally or financially. And there are going to be a number of hurdles that we need to overcome as leaders. But we've got to acknowledge that we need to do it because our employees are absolutely exhausted. You know, whether it's the pace of change, the ignition of AI, or the geopolitical tensions around the world, they need organizations to value their emotional and psychological well-being. There are endless amounts of research that say that employees would consider leaving an organization if they're not valuing their employee well-being. And we know that the pizza parties are a little bit of a dated idea. So without sounding like a broken record, let's break down the practical, systematic commitments that you can deliver on. And the first one is about reimagining flexibility. And this one won't cost you anything and it won't take too much time. What I will say is working in remote and hybrid environments, that's kind of become the norm. But the next evolution is about workplace flexibility, and it's a greater alignment to work-life harmony. And this is so important for those of you who answered burnout being one of your biggest challenges. Across Europe, we're seeing things like compressed working weeks becoming more as a standard. So you're still doing your full hours, but you're doing longer days and fewer days. There's actually quite a big focus on that in the UK right now, with the government discussing tipping the tables, so that it's not about employees validating the request. It's about the leaders having to justify why it would be refused. And we need to recognise that each of our employees is an individual with various peak productivity times. We need to recognize that there's a lot of stress and overwhelm, as we've seen in the answers already today. So it's thinking about setting personalized performance metrics, stop going with the one-size-fits-all approach, and start thinking about how employees can balance their priorities, how they can focus on their results rather than the time spent in the office. And once again, as I've already said today, it's focusing on that unique contributions so that we can boost engagement and reduce that burnout. The way in which we're going to be able to do that is through unpacking the root cause of the stress points, of the pressures. In the US, it's estimated by 2026, we're going to be spending about $9 billion on well-being. But the truth is that the majority of companies are sticking a plaster over it. They're not looking at the root cause. So if your staff are stressed, offering a stress management course is just part of the solution, but it's on you as a leader to understand where that stress has come from and what you need to do in the workplace to facilitate that workaround. It's all about the systemic well-being, challenging your policies, thinking about the support efforts that you have. Do you have the mental health conversations? Have you got that positive organizational culture? These things don't happen in pockets. It needs to be, going back to our water approach, it needs to be a tidal wave of effort. And how does that happen? Well, I'm really sorry. I know we're all burnt out. I know we all have that change fatigue, but it is about demonstrating resilient leadership. And there are 3 core levels that I'm going to need you to think about: yourself, your team, and your organization. So for yourself, put on your emergency mask first, prioritize your physical health, develop techniques to manage stress, and really get down to understanding and managing your own emotions. For your team, I need you to be creating safe spaces where they can express their ideas and their concerns, where they are empowered with autonomy to make decisions and really take ownership of the work. And when it comes to the organization, a bit like what I've already spoken about, it is about developing and implementing policies like crisis management, like flexible working, and yes, champion your well-being programs, but make sure that they add value. We do need to talk about burnout prevention. We know that next year we have to prioritize that long-term trust rather than our short-term gains, which is kind of what's got us into this place. So burnout, we know, comes from unclear expectations, a lack of support, insufficient advisories from leaders, and prioritizing well-being just hasn't been on the radar. So when you are focusing on preventing burnout, you're not fixing isolated issues. You need to create that culture where people are investing about it. And going back to that chat, we need to get people on board. Your people shouldn't feel like they always have to be on. You know, I am not going to be the first one to tell you this, and I probably won't be the last to tell you this, but if you're not taking breaks, if you're working every hour, then yeah, guess what? Your team are going to feel like they have to do the same. So I need you to set the tone by showing that healthy balance between work and recovery. And finally, now this one absolutely blows my brain that we still have to talk about it, but there was some heartbreaking research that came out this year that despite the amounts of dollars and pounds and everything else that we are investing into well-being, we are not measuring it, to the point that only 1 to 2% of organizations are measuring their well-being impact or their well-being programs. Can you imagine any other area in your business having such investment without a return on expectation or without some form of metric? We need to change that. So it's thinking about what you can do as a leader. Well, you can use your engagement surveys, you can use your absenteeism metrics, you can use your attention stats, your work-life balance reviews. Yeah, think about your benefits uptake, but make it tangible for your team. In my service, all of my leaders have a well-being objective because they have to demonstrate this throughout the year. It's not a fluffy nice to have. It's not something that we need to suddenly think about. It is a hardline deliverable. So that concludes our final trend of well-being. So Leah, I'll hand to you.
Yeah, and I recognize that we are up against the clock, so I'm going to bring us home here. Based on what's happening in the chat, I think that certainly we struck a chord. Nick, you struck a chord with your last trend around well-being, and a lot of folks are surfacing some of the challenges that they see right now in supporting a thoughtful approach to well-being. So top leadership and DEI trends for, excuse me, 2025 and beyond. Artificial intelligence moving from dabble to deploy. How can leaders confidently lead a human plus AI team today and boldly into the future? How can we focus on cognitive skills, strategic thinking, enterprise mindset, creative thinking? How can we harness the power of our teams at pace, at speed, so get people to work well together and do it in a way that recognizes how quickly we are all moving on a day-to-day basis, given the rapid and uncertain world that we are all a part of. Inclusion, making it an essential part of your leadership approach, and certainly well-being remaining top of mind as we continue to pile on the work that needs to get done and the priorities that we have, while trying to balance the wellness and the burnout that we know is something that we want to keep at bay. So 5 leadership and DEI trends for 2025 and beyond. And then I know a lot of you are starting to maybe exit the time or exit the webinar. We would like to ask you one more question if you've stuck with us and are willing to share. We'd love for you to just choose one resolution for your leaders to focus on. If you could choose one resolution for your leaders to focus on in 2025, as we start to maybe make New Year's resolutions, what would that be? One resolution that you would offer to your leaders as a core area for next year, next month, and beyond. What would that resolution be? You know that mine would be to focus on enterprise mindset. No, but it would be, right? To make sure that we are keeping the organization top of mind and connecting the work that your people do each and every day to that larger goal, because we know when we do that, we let our people know that they have something meaningful to contribute, that they are not a cog in the machine, but that the work that they do matters. So that would be my resolution. And I can see several of you putting your resolutions for your leaders in the chat. It looks like, oh, I love Tom, yours: assume positive intent, forgive, human-centric, humanosity. And yeah, I see well-being. Again, Nick, that really resonated with so many. So love to see that. Change is inevitable, and you have to address embrace a growth mindset, accountability, psychological safety. And I love what Patricia is saying: if we don't take care of our people and one another, we won't have a workforce. So a really strong sentiment for us, I think, to end on. So with that, I know that we are over time. I think we're almost 5 minutes over, which would keep on point with our 5 for 25 if we want to wrap it up there. And I think, Sue, you are going to let us know if there are any questions that have emerged that we haven't already addressed by reading through the chat.
No, I don't have any questions. And I think what we'll do, if I see anything come in, we can address those in the follow-up email. So I think we can go ahead and wrap up for today. So thank you, Leah and Nick. Great discussion today. And thank you to everyone who's joined us. We appreciate your time and attention. At the end of the session, we ask that you take a minute to fill out our survey, because your feedback makes us better. We hope that you'll join us again for another one of our upcoming webinars. Visit GP Strategies website at gpstrategies.com/webinars to view future sessions. I wish everyone on the call a wonderful and productive rest of your day. Thank you so much.
This webinar was brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we help organizations transform through their people. You can access more webinars or download additional resources by visiting the GP Strategies Resource Library. The link is on your screen and in the description.